Are we live? Starting.
Fantastic.
Great.
All right. Welcome, everybody. My name is Mike Schoenfeld. I'm president of the Waterford Union High School School Board. I appreciate everybody spending time with us today to get your questions answered and see if we can get to some facts around the referendum that's on the ballot for February 20th. With that, like I said, I'm Mike Schoenfeld. I'm school board president. We'll work around the room here and let everyone introduce themselves.
I'm Doug Schwartz. I'm the school board clerk.
Dennis Bertel, School Board Vice President.
Jeff Santaga, School Board Treasurer.
Excellent. Well, thank you, guys. We do have some questions that were submitted ahead of time. We'll start with those, and then if things come in live streamed, we will certainly handle that. Dr. Francois is with us today as our moderator to ask the questions.
Thank you. I am off camera, but I am monitoring the chat and will be answering or putting in questions as we go along. So let's get started and let's talk about our first question that came in prior to tonight's meeting. The question for the gentleman here tonight is, what will you guys do if the question does not pass? I know the building is in desperate need of help, but I worry our community will not pass it because of our age demographic.
I guess I'll give that one a shot. I look at this as there's four possibilities here. Obviously, if we have repairs, we're gonna have to find room within our operating budget to make the payments. You know, which is a struggle, but I won't go into a deep dive on that, but, you know, the numbers. Second thing we can do is, you know, we are authorized to borrow money up to $1 million if that was necessary, and we certainly do not want to take that route. The third possibility is hoping that the legislature will do something with revenue limits or even outright grants to money. I mean, they're still sitting on $4.3 billion in the legislature. And we're still waiting to see if the governor and the legislature are going to reach an agreement on whether any of those funds go to the public schools. And I guess the fourth thing, if we continue the way we're going, we're going to have to continue coming back to the community on a referendum to make the case so the voters will see fit that this is an important asset of the community and we need to preserve it. So really those are the four options I see, and any of the other three guys want to jump in on other options, please do.
Well, the need's not gonna go away. It's just gonna get worse. It's gonna cost more. Interest rates, probably won't go down. If anything, they'll probably go up. So if we kick it down the road another year, it's gonna be costing us all more on our taxes. Sure.
Objectively speaking too, we, as elected officials, we're representing the community and looking at all aspects of how the school is running. And we know that physically it's breaking down, and we're getting to the point where the cost of repair, you look at a cost analysis, what makes more sense, and we're very near and we've done some reviews and analysis on this. We're really at the end of the time frame on these things, and it's going to get very cost prohibitive and almost impossible to continue to make repairs.
Yeah, I think maybe one of the things too to take a look at and take a step back to how we arrived at this particular referendum and the two questions that are in front of the community. In post-2019 referendum, we took a step back and developed a 10-year plan. Historically, we relied on people that were in this building every single day to tell us what was wrong with the building. That was great if a building was younger, right? Under Dr. Francois' leadership, he had some relationships with an engineering firm. We brought that firm in to do a deep dive study on our building and helped us develop that 10-year plan, and quite frankly educated us on all the things that were wrong with our infrastructure that we had as a board and as an administration and as a staff had no idea were wrong with what we were dealing with. And then fast forward, two failed referendums that were each pieces of that 10-year plan to get passed. We decided that it would be best just to take a step back and let's turn this over to the community, right? That's who we represent, so let's hear more from them. And a community action committee was formed, 40 people representing all of the feeder districts, in the different communities that feed here into the high school. You know, some proponents of the past referendums and some, you know, that were against it, didn't want to see us spend that kind of money. But it was unanimous that it came back and they said, look, go get the entire 10-year plan done now. It is only getting more and more expensive every year. They took the tours, they went through the buildings, they went through the bowels underneath that we had all seen when Nexus took us through it. Now they saw it and they're like, wow, cannot believe this is where we're at. We need modernization. We're dying a slow death of death by 1,000 pinpricks. We need to move this building forward. They came forward, they recommended that to the board, and we unanimously approved their recommendation, and hence the 2 questions that are on the ballot in February.
And I think the only thing 2 things I would add to that is that the Citizens Advisory Committee, they even took a more global look. They wanted to know, why were we a single district with 4 feeder schools? Why were Waterford Graded and Waterford Union High School one school district? So we spent one whole meeting going through the history of why of previous consolidation attempts and what state law says about that. What was the second thing they were into?
School finance.
Oh yeah, the
Yes.
school finance portion of this. They listen to speakers, they listen to videos about how school finance operates in Wisconsin. They learned about revenue limits, they learned about that the legislature passed, they learned about the legislature establishing referendums for capital spending and operating referendums. So they looked at everything out there before coming to their conclusion and recommendation.
Thank you, friends. Just want to ask you to project your voice because we've got a small microphone here on the
All
computer
right.
and people
Okay.
are having a hard time hearing. Given that, I want to just remind those that are in the chat here live to feel free to ask your question in the comment spot. We are monitoring that and we'll incorporate that question as we're able. So if you've got a question for our board members, please feel free to ask. The next question that was pre-proposed to this group, board members, is what is the time frame on paying off this debt? And how long will the tax impact last on this?
Yeah, real quick, the term of the bond is 20 years that we're proposing, and at that point it would fall off.
But you look at what we've done previously, we've had bonds and we've been paying them off ahead of time. So it's 20 years, but we could actually pay it off sooner.
Yeah, the current bond of 20 years, we've prepaid about $4.5 million of that, which has saved our taxpayers about $1.5 million, maybe 1.4 million. Again, trying to be as fiscally responsible as we possibly can.
Great. Third question, what plans are in place to ensure future expenses to repair and replace infrastructure aren't going to a referendum?
Go ahead.
With the board, yeah, our board passed, was it 2 meetings ago?
Yes.
A moratorium on going back with something like this. But in addition to this, this sort of forgoes that by taking care of a lot of the things that have been nickeling and diming our district right now at the breakdowns. So it's a combination, I think, of those 2. Our pledge and more on the moratorium, but I think we will see less of that.
Yeah.
Doing a comprehensive
Yep.
repair like this. And
Yeah, exactly. That's one of the main reasons why, you know, in addition to just the inflationary aspect, one of the reasons why the Community Action Committee said, let's go get it all done, because we're spending between, you know, anywhere from, on a small year, $50,000 to $100,000, and on a high year, $300,000 to $400,000 in just repairs and emergency fixes to try to keep our building running. If you're not paying that on old equipment, that gives you that much more operating revenue to be able to handle these things as they come along. And like you said, that 12-year moratorium, I think it's probably gonna be more like 15 to 20 years, but we wanted to be conservative in our approach like we have across this entire referendum process. Yeah, we see no need to come back. Quite frankly, most of that will be still under warranty, at least to large degrees in that time frame anyways.
I would also say, in addition to that, we've always, as a district, been very, very good about maintaining and staying ahead of that. And we've gotten as far as we have, I think, with the building because of that. But when you're looking at a repair that's $300,000 that addresses one small aspect of a breakdown, and maybe the same price allows you to comprehensively fix, for instance, plumbing in a wall, it just becomes fiscally irresponsible to continue on like we're doing, and then it'll be physically impossible at some point.
Well, it's also getting to the point, there aren't parts available anymore. I mean, when you talk to the maintenance people and they're looking on Amazon and eBay trying to find parts because they're not available from the manufacturers anymore, that's getting pretty bad.
Agreed.
Talk louder?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, louder.
Louder.
Okay. Thank you. The next question is a multi-part question. Let me break it down into the first piece here. What's the 10-year plan is the question.
I guess the simplest answer is it's everything that's incorporated in this referendum, in those two questions. If you go out to the website, wuhs.referendumfacts.org, you will be able to see everything that's included there. The major components are around the infrastructure repairs, expansion of our tech ed program, and the modernization of our educational spaces.
The second part is there a longer plan since the debt will likely be borrowed for a longer period of time?
Again, going back to part of our answer before, we don't plan to come back to referendum for 12 years or longer. That we adopted that as a resolution. We believe this 10-year plan in that contains enough modernization that we're good for a period of time. What that total landscape looks like, TBD, because of the fact that there's constant changes in educational processes and innovations and those types of things. However, trying to forecast anything in our crystal ball, we don't foresee anything in the near future that would go out that would require us to come back for some major changes to this extent in our modernization efforts.
Okay, we're going to move to the next question, and again, asking anybody that's watching live, if you have a question, please put it in the comments. We will certainly incorporate that into the discussion for our board members this evening. What changed since the last referendum that caused such a drastic increase in cost? What was the reasoning behind the larger increase?
All right. The biggest changes are, number one, the last two referendums were only portions of the 10-year plan. They were a little bit different packages each time, but primarily the same, trying to get the infrastructure pieces through, along with some critical need modernization in the last two attempts. This now includes the full 10-year plan. So that's one major piece of that. The other two other major pieces is we did now include some expansion of technical education. This came directly from feedback from the Community Action Committee, as well as our polling of broader aspects of the communities that we serve. All of them expressed a much needed interest in expansion of those capabilities and becoming more of a premier provider of those things here within the Waterford community. And then the final piece is just the overall inflation from when we built this plan 3 to 4 years ago. It's going up about 6% per year. So as an example, we're just over 90 million between the two questions now. If that goes up another 6% because it gets kicked down the road for another year, that's now over 100 million roughly. And then another, we're over 110, 112 million then the next year, right? So it really, behooves the fact of what the committee told us, be fiscally responsible and get it done now.
I think we should add, I think we had one question that read, please cover the minimal effect on taxes, question number 1 at the top of the page. in short, the cost as proposed, is this would cost a family $99 per $100,000 value of your home. That's the long and short of it. I know some people break it down approximately $24.85 per month of a $300,000 house. But I think an easier rule of thumb is $99 per 100,000 value of your home.
Go ahead. All right. The only other comment I would make on that is that we do believe that is a not to exceed. We believe we put enough conservatism in our numbers there, we believe that we've got it more than covered. The other thing is, if we believe what the Fed is feeding us, maybe for first quarter, we might start to see some interest rate changes.
Yeah.
That brings it down. The ability to prepay, like we did on the last note, that saves the community money, and again tries to shorten that bond period.
A question that came into the group is, does the update of tech ed, or technical education space, this career technology education space, include equipment and technology, or is it just the space? And much like our last culinary arts center and so forth, it's not just the shell of the building, it includes the ovens and the tables and the chairs and all of the commercial equipment, refrigeration and so forth. So that would be the same, but maybe talk a little bit about the CTE expansion specifically.
Well, it's evident, it's very much a need, and I think everybody is coming to that same conclusion. We've had a number of people come to our board meetings, a number of our citizens, a number of our parents, pleading with us to see what we can do to expand on that. So it's a desire, it's something that we need as a society, we need as a community, and we want to address that, and we also want to meet some of the needs of our community specifically that have come to us.
Yeah.
And in the metal shop, we have that welding now that it's actually run through Gateway, so when they leave here, they're already certified. We've added on already, and there's no more room to add on. We've updated the equipment in there. If you look at our milling machines and that, they're all digital now. That's something we didn't have before, so a lot of it has been modernized.
Yeah, I think one of our big goals is to allow our students to come out fully certified, to enter an apprenticeship, or actually go through some or all of their apprenticeship while in the process, while coming through high school. The other area we've looked at and had conversations around expanding is actually nursing, and using some of that space to add some CNA type of certifications and to begin that process for kids to get out, again, where there's a shortage. We've made a pledge as a school and as an administration and a board to really focus kids on being career ready, not just college ready. And the more we can do that, this is a significant investment directly into those programs.
Yeah, and I guess I would add, we were hearing from the community that they wanted some more options there. And we did expand our welding program 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't recall if we spent cash reserves, but we created more welding booths, which required reorganizing that whole area. And it's been a very successful program. But one of the problems now is, if somebody is in there welding, the metal shop that's there with it, you can't be in there working on a lathe while somebody's welding. So, that's a space and configuration problem that we can't solve with the current footprint that we have there. And, we have wood shop, metal shop, sharing the same classroom. We've got the robotics, engineering people doing their 3D drawings. If you come and do a tour of the school and see how crowded those spaces are, we had to move robotics to the floor of an empty room in Mapleview that we saw the other night with these kids on the floor trying to get their robots all set up for a competition. I think they have this weekend. I guess there's nothing necessarily wrong about crawling around the floor, but it doesn't make a really good use of space for the whole thing there. So, and the automotive shop, that's also a very crammed facility. If you're trying to do small engines in there as well, and you got cars up on lifts, and I know a lot of the community have been there because some of the people who have done tours remember that there was a time where senior citizens could come here and get their oil changed. They had to bring their oil and oil filter, but the kids would do it for them in the auto lab. Hopefully with our new auto teacher, we might look to doing something like that with the community again.
Yep, we definitely want to try to bring the community into that as a part of it.
Were we talking loud enough?
So
Okay.
far, yeah, let's
All
keep,
right.
keep those voices up, thank you. Just for the note, almost 800 of our almost 1,000 kids are currently in or have taken a career and technology education class. So roughly 8 out of 10 kids have touched some of those CTE wings. The next question was about American Disabilities Act, safety, security, fire. How is this referendum addressing some of those concerns? Is that still part of this question?
Yeah, absolutely,
absolutely,
yes,
yeah.
absolutely. It's a,
Well,
go ahead.
Yeah, when we look at this 10-year, and one of the questions was, how did we get to this, and what is it going to mean over time? A good chunk of it are things that are not necessarily breakdown matters, but making our building accessible, to some of our students with disabilities. There are some things on the website you can look at, but it's terrible. And then a building of this size with the number of people in this building, we don't have a sprinkler system, so,
Technically, we have one sprinkler head, and that's in the finishing room in the wood shop. That's it. Other than that, there is no sprinklers in this building.
Yeah, so fire suppression is a major expenditure
Yes.
that's part of this referendum request.
One of the other reasons that the CAC recommended starting over with that Mapleview area and just wiping it out is to actually raise that building to the same level or as close as possible to the level of the rest of the building, so we can eliminate all of those staircases and the elevator and turns. And actually, there's a video out there of one of our students trying to navigate between those two levels, and it is very, very difficult for somebody in a wheelchair or even on crutches to navigate. So all of that gets fixed. The second question also contains ADA capabilities with new restrooms in our outdoor facilities, true access, ADA compliant parking lots, the ability to get from the sidewalk or the street into those facilities without having to go up and down a gravel driveway. I was glad I passed by one of our students one time because I pushed him up the gravel after a football game. That shouldn't have to happen. They need to be able to access all facilities provided by the school district.
I think the other one was also safety. We'd be having a loading dock then, so we wouldn't have to worry about propping doors open and coming through the building, actually disrupting classes, study halls, by bringing stuff in. You'd be coming right to a loading dock.
but at a time when we are worried about security, here we are with doors that are propped open.
Yes.
And they're coming right through where students are trying to study in the commons area.
We're getting to the end of our questions here shortly, so again, if on the live side, if you have some questions that you want to put into the comment area, this would be a great time to do so, and we'll make sure we try to incorporate those before we close. The last question that's in here right now is, why not live within your means? Why not use the budget to fix things, and why now with the interest rates so high?
I'm gonna ask Dennis to give us a little tutorial on school financing.
Well, I'll do my best, and I don't profess to be an expert, but people need to understand that in 1992, Governor Thompson signed a bill that limited school imposed school revenue limits on the operational costs of every school district in Wisconsin. And operational costs are normally considered to be salaries, your gas and lights bill, your food service, bus transportation, and your first year budget operating under these revenue limits was whatever your budget was the year before this law went into effect. Now remember, before that law went into effect, school boards basically taxed the way they wanted to. So if you, that year before it went into effect, if you had a lot of extra cash, what some may call fat in your budget, you weren't hurt by that law as soon as districts who budgeted very
Leanly.
conservatively.
Yeah.
And so anyway, we've been under operating revenue limits since 1993. From 93 to 2010, increases in operations were limited to the consumer price index for each of those years. Then in 2010, as kind of a part of Act 10 taking place, increases in your operations were put at almost half of what the consumer price index was. And if you go more recently now, you go back for the last 8 years, 6 of those 8 years, there were 0 per pupil increases allowed by the legislature. And if you go for the 2 years of COVID, so 21, 22, 22, 23, spending was froze. So we've not kept up with inflationary costs for the last 31 years. And so some people say, well, you should budget for this. Well, I guess I would throw this in. For at least the last 15 years, Waterford Union High School District has never taxed to the max that we could have under operations. Some people say, well, you should have been doing that and putting money away. Well, it wouldn't have equaled that much money, but should we have taxed to the max, collecting money we did not need from the taxpayer? Would that have been the right thing to do? I know since I've been on the school board, people said, no, that's not the right thing to do. And not only that, but what this leads up to is, after the legislature passed revenue limits in '93, they promptly followed that up with referendums. If schools needed money to exceed operations, they created the operational referendum, and it could be recurrent or non-recurrent. And if you follow the news, you might have discovered that 10, 15 school districts in southeast Wisconsin are all going for operational revenues because there's competition for teachers and there's salaries, programming, special ed cost. There's so many things there. So we're not going for an operational, but the other one the legislature did after they put revenue limits on was the Capitol Building Major Improvement Referendum. So in essence, once revenue limits were put on for operations, it was the legislature's plan. In fact, I think I can still hear Governor Walker saying this, that if schools want to go build a Taj Mahal school building, they've got to go to the voters. And the voters will make those decisions. So when people complain I'm getting referendum fatigue, it's happening way too much, I want to communicate that we're operating under the system that was created for us. We didn't create the system. And I would also add the following. You know, we have been able to generate some cash reserves. As Mike said earlier, we're spending $50,000, $100,000, $200,000, up to $300,000 in repairs. And some of those repairs, I think a couple of them have been repeated. And so that's almost the definition of insanity to keep doing that. So, but you start eating up your cash reserves, and you don't want to do that as a school district. You don't want to affect your bond rating should we borrow money in the future. But it's not sustainable to keep taking money from our cash reserves to pay for repairs and major improvements in particular. So I guess the answer to the question is we're operating under revenue limits since 1993. You can't stash away millions every year under that system. And then the system the legislature put out there is to go to referendum and let the voters decide. And, you know, we're here to give you factual information to help you see that there's a need to do something with the building here.
Yeah, the only thing I would add to that, Dennis, is I want to expand a little bit on that inflationary impact of no longer being able to adjust to CPI when that was in place before and then taken away in 2009. If you look at our graduates of 2023 were the first class to be affected by that. On average, those students were affected by $3,200 per student per year. At 950 students in this school, we're talking over $3 million per year cut from our budget because those funds didn't keep pace with inflation. So you can say we're not fiscally responsible. However, when adjusted for inflation, we're operating this school on $3 million less per year than we were in 2009. Add to that this $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 in repair bills every year. because we have not passed a referendum to get rid of this old infrastructure. And as Dennis said, that referendum process is what the state told us we had to do. That's how schools get funded. We don't have a choice in that. We'd love it for it to be different. I think Dennis is right. We didn't tax to the max because those dollars belong in your pockets, not ours, right? But now it's time, and now we need some help.
Right.
A question that came in, just wanted to clarify the property taxes. What does this mean for a property tax payer as far as cost?
$99 per $100,000 worth of value per year.
Okay. Last question that I have, unless there's a last 1 minute that comes in. So please, again, last chance to put a question in. What happens if this referendum doesn't pass?
Great question. As Dennis just explained, this is the process the state has designed for us to follow. In some way, shape, or form, we have to pass a referendum. We took, as I said early on in the discussion, we took a different approach this year by asking the community very specifically what they would want and how we should go about this. Because we know that 10-year plan needs to be done, and we know that we're 4 years into a 10-year plan already, and we just keep wasting money by not getting these passed. If this doesn't pass, we've been more creative this year. We'll have to get creative again. One option that the committee reviewed was, well, just pass enough to get the galvanized piping out of there and kick that can down the road again. That is within realm of possibility. However, that's still the death by 1,000 pinpricks. That doesn't attract families to the community. That still keeps us way, way, way below average and what's happening in our neighboring and conference school districts. This referendum gets us to about average of what we're seeing across in our conference, in other schools in southeastern Wisconsin, and other union high schools. The other thing I would tell you, as Dennis pointed out, this is the way the state designed it. There are 60 schools statewide going to referendum this spring.
96.
96, sorry. Now, it was 60 the last
I
I
looked
heard.
today, it's 96 schools.
All right, 96 schools statewide. So we're not alone. This is how it's designed, and it's time. An investment in the schools is an investment in your community. We had representatives from the multiple boards in the feeder district, the village, the town, and all of them were in favor of, hey, this investment in this community really starts with the schools.
We do have a couple questions that came in late, so we're happy to answer. And the question is, has the board considered alternative sources of funding, such as fundraising or corporate sponsorships or donations?
Yeah, we have. The net of it is we've seen some small things, potentially like sponsoring a scoreboard or something like that. We've explored, would somebody sponsor a tech ed classroom, auto shop provided by AutoZone? The net of it is we don't have a lot of large businesses in Waterford that have stepped forward to do those things. However, we are exploring every possible avenue that we can. A fundraising campaign will be very, very difficult to raise these types of funds, and hence we're following the process that the state designed for us.
I would also say having a new scoreboard or having a tech room would not necessarily help us with our infrastructure. Some of the issues that we're finding in repairs right now are gonna be compounded and cumulative. We just will not be able to stay up with it. And so a tech room would be nice, but it won't help us with making our building ADA compliant or safe from a fire suppression standpoint. We're just too far behind in all of that right now.
Well, a good example of that would be, you go in this year, you replace the pipes. Now next year, you're putting in a fire suppression system. Now I'm taking the ceilings back out again and doing the same thing. So you're pulling half the stuff apart 3 years in a row. it's not cost effective.
Yeah, it's the constant Band-Aid approach
Yes.
is much more expensive.
Okay, next question. Why are we asking for new things instead of repairing things? Why wasn't the repairs a priority a few years ago when we asked for a field house?
So the field house, I don't think any of us were on the board at that time. Maybe Jeff was, I'm not sure. You know, again, we took a step back after the 2019 referendum and said, let's just focus on needs. Let's bring in the experts who understand these buildings and these types of buildings. We put together the plan. The reasonings behind the field house, you know, were the reasons back then. I can tell you there's no field house here. I can tell you we're wiping out 2 gyms. So we're replacing with 2 gym floors, the equivalent of 2 courts in a gym. But that's it. And those gyms are being wiped out because of all the things we talked about with wiping out the Maple View School, leveling that, ADA compliance, and some changes in our educational spaces and so on.
The school was keeping up with the repairs.
Yeah.
But you get to a certain year, 30, 20, 30, 40 years, they compound too quickly to stay ahead of them. So it becomes less of a repair and more of an overhaul. And as I recall, we were responding to overwhelming response to the community about the field house. At that time, that was sort of a hot thing. Other schools were doing it, better or worse, and we had a number of people approach the school about that at that time.
Okay, a couple of questions that are coming in late. Under the assumption that the 2019 referendum would have been primarily used for essential repairs such as roof replacements, HVAC, plumbing, electrical, but it seems like it was mostly spent on a workout room and parking lot. I'm curious to see what the $9.95 million was actually spent on.
Yeah, so there were significant repairs that were done. Anything that was designated to be repaired in that referendum was done. You know, we did portions of the roof, the lighting was changed, the other infrastructure needs with some chillers and things like that were
We
put
put out boilers that were here when I went to high school.
Doug cried over the boilers being removed.
Yes, I did.
But yeah, so those repairs were made. The additions of the for the agriculture center, the fitness center, and the industrial kitchens for our FACE program were all needs as well. I was just entering the board when this passed. And I can tell you that one of the conversations was to get rid of our FACE program. That faced with a community that's saying, no, you need to get people ready for the world, not just get them ready for college. We're now putting students through there that can come out and enter the culinary world, right? We have some great teachers in there that come from being chefs in previous lives. And like 800 out of 950 students or so are involved in that. So to me, that was a great investment. So it was either do those things or get out. We were out of business. As far as the fitness center is concerned, if anybody had taken a tour and actually looked at the weight room that existed, it was really a couple of classrooms that were shoved together, and it was very, very unsafe. I don't think we could put more than 15 to 20 kids in there without them being in danger of injury, and potentially significant injury, because you know we have some kids that can throw around a lot of weight, if you've seen our powerlifting program. But we couldn't fit a whole Phy Ed class in there by any stretch. And one of the things we're doing to modernize our Phy Ed is talking about lifetime fitness, right? Healthy lifestyles. That includes a lot of the types of equipment that is in the fitness center now that we had zero room for in our old weight room, right? Which was primarily just some free weights and some benches. So it isn't just sports, it's physical education, and last I knew, education is in the word physical education. And our Phy Ed classes is part of what we teach here in Waterford.
Yeah, I just add two things. I think our powerlifting program now has approximately 80 students in it. I mean, it's a huge number of kids that would have been absolutely impossible to function in our old weight room. And the new weight room is really almost undersized for 80 kids, but you know, they obviously schedule it. And I guess the other comment I wanted to make, because people in the community have asked me, is they've asked me, why isn't that fitness area open to the public? Well, the fact of the matter is, it is open to the public, and if you go on the school website, you'll be able to find it there, the times, any costs involved, everything's there on the website, but it is indeed open to the public.
Question, why wasn't the building made ADA compliant or fire sprinklers added during the last remodel project?
In the sections that were touched, they essentially were, right? I mean, there's access. We didn't touch major portions of the building. Again, you know, we are where we are. We took a step back after that process and created a 10-year plan, which includes the ADA compliance and all the safety and fire suppression. And, you know, I'll thank you, Dr. Francois, on your help there in guiding us as to what's the proper way to take a look at these buildings. It just wasn't done previously. We knew what we knew, and we relied on the people that were in the building every day. And, you know, we needed to take a step back and bring the experts in.
So with that, I'll just bring in some editorial piece here. I will certainly provide in the comment area or as a part of this discussion a breakdown of how the costs were expensed in the last referendum so that the community has transparency in that. As I took over after the referendum was passed and actually implemented the actual referendum project itself, I can speak to those costs and how that money was spent. Oftentimes we only see the culinary arts or the fitness center, the parking lot, because that's visual, and everything that was done inside the walls or on top of the roof is not something that actually gets seen. So I can share that report out, which kind of leads into this next question about the ADA compliance and fire sprinklers. We can only do what the referendum had involved in its question. By state statute, we cannot use referendum dollars in manners that were not explicitly part of the question. So the last question that we have in front of us is, who controls how this money is spent? Seems like what is asked for can easily be changed without our vote. You say you'll do this and that, but can change the money being spent since you do something else, since we are approving the funds, not that the actual projects that are being asked for are being done. So just maybe speaking to who controls the money, and it seems like you can change the project, so maybe speak to that.
Well, you said it, right? But state law requires us to do what we said we were going to do. Those plans and the laundry list of everything is out on the website, wuhs.referendumfacts.org. If I say it enough times, I'll remember it. But it's out there, and that's what we're doing. Now, is every little detail finite? Not necessarily, because we're not spending money on architects and engineers to get to that nth level of detail before we have approval from the taxpayers. That would be very irresponsible for us to do that. But at the line item level, you can see everything that's included in this referendum, and by state law, we have to do that.
To more directly answer your question, in operational sense, Dr. Francois is responsible for how the money is spent. And ultimately, though, the school board's responsible to be sure money is spent as on the projects listed in the referendum question. Correct. So it's ultimately our responsibility, and we're going to be certain that that is spent only on items listed in the question.
And in an effort to build trust with the community and create that transparency that the community desires, we will be creating a committee that will oversee the expenditures of this referendum if it should be passed. We want to make sure that the community knows that these dollars are being spent on the projects that we identified and nothing more, and that we're staying within budget, we're delivering it on time, and we did exactly what we said we'd do. And so we welcome a community engagement around that, and that transparency will be evident and be posted throughout, along with project updates and videos of the projects unfolding so that people can fully see what was transpiring is exactly what we had requested. So that starts to wrap up our comments for tonight. I want to thank everyone for joining us live. I want to give each board member just a chance to say one parting comment as you depart, anything that might be on your mind as we slowly wind down here.
Okay, I'll jump out there. talking to people, they say, well, we drive past the school, it looks good. I encourage them to come in and take the tour. I'm sure if they want, they can even talk to Dr. Francois, he can set something up. But you come inside and see what it actually looks like and see what the issues are. Just driving past and saying it looks good from the outside is not the answer. We've done a good job of trying to keep the school up to date, but things are past end of life. And like I said, half the time you can't get parts anymore for our heating, air conditioning. The systems don't communicate. I was talking to a maintenance guy last night. He says his computer doesn't communicate with half the systems. There we have it.
I guess I would say that I'm committed to this community, I'm committed to education, and I would think anybody sitting in my chair looking at the things that I see and that's presented to us as a board would come to the same conclusion. The school has done over the years a very good job, as Doug said, maintaining it, and so it does look nice, but looking nice and having pipes that are burst and humidity problems and no fire suppression and ADA, things have changed even with the number of special needs students that we serve. It's certainly way more than we did 20 years ago, and so different needs come before us, and what we're trying to address. We've had input from the community. We on our initial bites at this, we tried to be conservative, but it was the community that said, this is compounding too fast. I think you need to do it all at once, and there will be some savings, and it'll make some sense that when you're addressing one thing, there are other things while you're in a wall, in a ceiling, that you can address.
Well, I have a number of things I want to say. One, I want the public to know that our experts have assured us that if this passes, this building is going to have a 40-plus year lifespan at a minimum if we pass this. So some people were concerned that 15 years down the road, we're going to have to do the whole, no, this is going to have at least a 40-year lifespan. And if it has proper maintenance, it should exceed that time period. I guess I'd say two things. One of the things that concerns me is public schools the last 3 or 4 years have been a political hot potato across the country. And I think that impacts, and rightfully, some voters' ideas about what they want to support or not support in their local schools. Thankfully, we've not had those issues here. I just read today that Cudahy School District Superintendent resigned over political issues, and so it does go on in this area. But I just hope if you're feeling sour about public schools because of some of what's gone on in the last few years across the country, I'd ask you to evaluate whether that's going on here. I guess the second thing I'd want to say, and I know I'm older than most, but this is an investment in the community. That's my sincere belief. The way I was raised, my parents taught me that people paid for my public school, people before me, people before them paid for my parents, people before my parents paid for my grandparents, and it was viewed as a civic responsibility and an investment in the betterment of one's community. And I think that's been lost somewhere along the line. I don't have kids anymore. Well, I don't either. And I'm retired like a lot of the people I've spoken with, and I'm now on your quote unquote fixed budget. So like I said, I view this as a civic responsibility. And now, if I knew the school was asking for something outrageous, that's one thing. But when you open up your building and open up the walls and offer tours, and if you see what's what here that needs to be done, then you'll understand that this is really sincerely a necessary project. So
I can't really add to anything that the other gentlemen haven't stated already. We'll end with that we're trying to be as transparent and forward as possible. If there are questions that come up, you can write any one of us. Our emails are on the website, on the district website. You can go to the website with all the facts. Dr. Francois will give you a personal tour if you can, and if not, I'll get you the right person to give you the personal tour. if he's not available when you're available. It's all about transparency. It's all about doing the right thing for our community, as Dennis mentioned. And regardless of how you feel one way or the other, please go vote on February 20th. Thank you very much, everybody.
Well, and that brings up a closing question. So thank you for that tee up. But why did you decide to put the question in February rather than April?
Simple answer is it's a valid election date in the state of Wisconsin. If this would pass, we need as much time as possible so that hopefully we're breaking ground before the, because we have limited construction windows of the summer. We'd want to be doing things this summer already. We don't spend money on plans and architects and engineers until the question passes.
Time is of the essence.
Time is of the essence.
Good answer.
Thank you to the board members that are in attendance tonight. I appreciate your correspondence. Thank you for those that attended live, and keep the questions coming in if you watch this delayed recording. We'd be happy to answer your questions and stay engaged and informed and cast your ballot.
Thank you.